Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Danger. Whoa, Danger.
That was loud.
He says hello.
Hello, welcome to our Tuesday Live.
We missed you guys last week, and we're back for a new month.
We are, and we have a new topic this month. Oh, Jen was like the perfect freeze there too. That was awesome. I'm sure she'll be back. I know Jen was having some connection issues. There she is.
She's back.
Yeah, but I don't know how long I'm going to last, guys.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. Just keep trying. So before we begin, what do we have to tell people to do?
Like, comment,
Yeah.
share, engage, subscribe.
We want to
We
hear.
will answer your questions in the chat in Facebook and YouTube land. We are monitoring it, so please interact with us. Give us something to talk about.
Please, we want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. So, and if we hear ourselves twice right now, I'm sorry. So we are monitoring comments. Make sure you leave comments. And while we're here, before we move on, take a moment, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And let's talk about today's topic, shall we?
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're shifting gears into self-sabotage 101, right?
Mm-hmm. How do your clients self-sabotage, and how do you as
And so,
sabotaging habits?
and also, how can we help clients who self-sabotage? I think that's a big piece of it as well. I am currently apparently distracted, which might be a self-sabotaging behavior. I don't know. So I'm just trying to find us on Facebook, and I'm not seeing this.
Trying to put us everywhere.
Let's talk about self-sabotage, what that means, all of that good stuff. Let's talk about self-sabotage. What is the definition of the self-sabotage? Before we even get to what today's specific topic, what is the definition of self-sabotage?
It's when you sabotage yourself. When you undermine your own success, you're the only person in your way.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you can play the victim card, but we're not playing the victim card in the sense where we're saying like other people are the problem and they're making my life hard. I'm the only person who is in my own way, which is probably everyone's problem or a lot of people's problems.
I would definitely say it is a pervasive. I mean, I think we all tend to be our own worst enemies, right? So that is fun. We have a description here, which is self-sabotage occurs when we destroy ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, or deliberately hinder our own success, well-being, undermining personal goals and values. And already that tells me how this relates to coaching in a lot of ways. What does that say to you guys when you read that?
It sounds like I need to beat myself up more.
Yeah. Poor self.
How dare I get in my own way? It's that thing that we do, Brooke, when we pretend that we're doing this, but when we go stupid. Yeah, that's a self-sabotage moment right there.
100%. And that is, I mean, negative self-talk, it can come out in a lot of ways. And that's really what we'll be talking about for this month in July. Maybe if we get a bunch of great subjects, we might even extend it a little bit. But we'll be talking about how we as human beings and how clients are self-sabotagers and how they sabotage themselves and sabotage their goals, sabotage the things that they want, sabotage, like it said in that their well-being, their goals, their values, and how they undermine their own success in a lot of ways. So I am excited about this topic and this overarching umbrella of a topic because
Yes.
it's very valuable and we can connect to it.
I think a lot of new coaches self-sabotage themselves as well when it comes to setting up their business and marketing.
What? Coaches don't do, they're perfect. They don't do anything wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. Coaches don't have problems. No, I think that everybody in this field is drawn to this field because they have
lots of problems.
Experienced some growth in their lives and had probably some self-sabotaging behaviors that they worked through and now are excited to help other people do the same thing. So, but that doesn't mean that those things don't creep in. And I agree, the lack of confidence and everything that a lot of people have ends up with them exhibiting a lot of self-sabotaging behavior, for sure. Not that and all of it is conquerable and we want our coaches to conquer it. So hopefully this month helps them a bit with that.
Do we freeze? Oh, we did freeze.
That was
I think
weird.
the stream is having connection issues.
Yeah, maybe it's not just me.
It is. I see that. Oh no.
Yeah.
And it just went away on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Should we end our stream and then go back up with it?
Yeah, probably.
That's pretty unbearable.
Can we stream using?
I don't want to do that though. Actually, I really
Could we use Zoom or?
we'll have
We
to
can always-
cobble it back together. No, I think it's back up again. Are we back?
Okay,
up?
let's just keep going. Let's
I
just
think
keep
we
going.
are back up again.
Fingers
We are
crossed.
good.
Yay! Thank you for allowing us.
We are
Your
back.
stream's trying to sabotage us.
Sabotage ourselves.
This is not self-sabotage. This is internet sabotage. Alrighty, so let's then talk about today's subject more specifically, and that is: are you gaslighting yourself?
No, we're not talking about that. You're crazy.
Yes, we are. Gaslighting
No,
is
you're crazy.
a big topic right now. I think a lot of people are. I think it's something we've heard a lot about, right? I think a few years ago, nobody had any idea what gaslighting was, and suddenly it's in a lot of places. It's in movies. We hear about it all the time. So, what do you all know about gaslighting?
It's what you say is happening to you when you lose an argument.
What?
If I lose an argument, then I say you're gaslighting me. And
Oh, okay.
I win the argument. No, that's not true.
How do you?
It's a form. So originally, it came from a movie. Like in the 1940s, there was a movie called Gaslighting or Gaslight, where a guy just tried to make his wife go crazy, and he was lying to her and being like, "Oh no, the gas lights are actually on. I don't know what you're talking about," and it drove her insane, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then it got picked up again in like the 2000 aughts, and a psychological phenomenon that we use to describe a lot of different behaviors.
Agreed.
That's just-
Yeah, I think it's self-manipulation, really negative self-talk.
Well, we haven't gone to the self part yet. I mean, just like if somebody's gaslighting you.
If I'm
what are they
gaslighting Lisa,
doing?
I'm trying to make you question your own perceptions and your own sense of reality.
Jen, please speak because you are moving on my screen.
Okay.
And if I was gaslighting you, I would tell you the opposite.
Yeah, I'd be like, "You're so frozen, Jen. I can't see
Why are you so frozen, Jen? No, you're gonna move great. You're gonna doing great.
Gaslighting was what, the 2022 word of the year or something? It got really big in 2022. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a fun fact, actually, I was gaslighting my friend the other day. This is a real thing. Let me tell you. We're playing this game together called Minecraft, and we built our house, and he built his room next to mine. And what I did was I moved the wall just slightly over so that his room was smaller and my room was bigger. And when he asked me about it, I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. This room was the same size. It's always been."
That's like an Arrested Development moment right there. I think that actually happened in Arrested Development, where like she moved the wall. For those of you who are cult TV show fans of Arrested Development, the mom in that show did that to her neighbor.
Yeah, but like you don't when you are being gaslit, it's never like these big things. It's not like I'm trying to convince you that you have schizophrenia. It's usually these small little tiny inconsistencies or things that make you question your own sanity.
Yes.
It's never really the person who's saying no, you're crazy or you're wrong. It's these little microaggressions that make you like, is there something wrong?
Is this me? Is there something wrong? And I was in a relationship that was not a healthy relationship for a while, and there was a lot of this going on where I had to like check my sanity and be like, no, this isn't right. This is not. No, this is not normal. No, I deserve better than this. Like but it was this constant like getting this constant feedback that I was asking for unrealistic things and asking like just by wanting to like go out and do something, it was made for me to feel like I was asking this grand and it was like, wait, no, this is normal. This is what normal people do. Like, you're making me feel crazy right now for wanting normal things. And it was maddening. It was so frustrating for me.
I used to get "you're remembering that wrong" was when I was being gaslit by a boss. It was always, no, you're remembering that wrong. I'm like, no, that is absolutely what happened. You want to bring 5 of the other staff in here to confirm that? And it was
This is why I have receipts on everything.
Right. I was in a situation where I got so frustrated. I literally created a calendar and I would write down things that happened so that I could go back and reference it. No, on this date, you said this, right? Because I wanted to not be crazy. Like I wanted to not feel insane because I was so sick of my experience being questioned. Like, no, that happened. That really happened. No, And so like I literally reached the point where I was like, I'm writing this down. And there was a money manipulation that I had with somebody that drove me crazy, where it was a situation where I borrowed money and then I paid it back and then some, but like it was held over me with strings attached, and like it was this constant thing, and it was like I had to like sit down and go, okay, wait, no, I paid it back. I don't owe them anything. Why are you saying that I do still? And like it was this weird, and it's just this weird manipulation where you start to question your own judgment and experience of the world. Right. Yeah. And it's a huge thing. Perception of reality, remember, and typically leads to confusion. Yeah. Like a lot of confusion.
So what benefit? Oh, go on.
I was going to say the self-gaslighting is when that's being done to you and that becomes your inner critic, your inner voice. And now you start doing that to yourself. Right. I mean, that's what I got from our research.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it happens 100% of the time because somebody else has gaslit us. But I think that is the biggest reason it happens is because, and I think a lot of times it happens in the experience of a parent and when we're younger and we have a parent that is telling us that the world is one way when we have a different experience, and then we begin to question our own judgment as a kid, and we take that into adulthood. And I think it can also happen in adulthood, absolutely, but I think that a lot of times this comes out of experiences, and may not even be a parent, but somewhere where our judgment is questioned and then we start to judge ourselves. Even if it can also happen, I think, when people criticize us and we start to believe those criticisms, right? And so then we start to question ourselves.
Wait, couldn't the opposite be the case too? Like someone criticizes us and we just ignore the criticisms. Like they might be very justified criticisms.
Yeah,
like, no, I'm the best.
I guess criticisms is like, you're a kid, right? And you're hanging out with other kids, and other kids are very loose and free with their words and observations. So you have some other kid that you really like or something. Maybe you're a girl and it's a boy, and that boy tells you that he doesn't like you because your red hair is ugly and you have freckles,
That sounds a little personal.
No. And then you grow up and you think, you're telling yourself, oh my goodness, nobody's going to like me because of my red hair and freckles. And that prevents you from doing things and believing things about yourself and your experience of the world. But it's not true, right? You're holding one person's perspective, something somebody said to you one time to be fact, and then adopting that as a rule for your life. And I think gaslighting. Yeah.
So that experience that somebody else is gaslighting you and you buy into it, you might question it at first, but then you buy into it and then you start gaslighting yourself because of how someone else projected onto you, which is what Brooke was similarly speaking about, where that person put onto her what their manipulation was to convince her that she was wrong, that she was not right, and found a technique that worked for her that allowed her to check herself so that can become a more stronger behavior, that she can rely on herself, that she can trust herself, that she can completely not buy into what that other person was telling her.
But a lot of times, I think what you had just said had that up. This self-gaslighting is often invisible in nature and shows up as a suppression of a thought or a feeling. And I think that that's really a critical point. I'll leave it up here, actually. It's invisible in nature and shows up as a suppression of a thought or a feeling. That invisible in nature piece, I think, is super important because we don't, I think, realize, and our clients often don't realize, I think, when they're doing these things. They've just been telling them that this is how the world is and this is how things are for so long. A lot of times they don't realize that they're self-gaslighting. And I think that that's why this topic is so powerful. It really comes into that, let's remove blocks, let's talk about perspective. And those little things, when our clients say, I don't know, that's a form of self-gaslighting. Because they know, right? They do. And if they don't know, they know that there's a way they can figure it out. Right. And that they have told themselves for so long, they have no idea, they're not capable, they can't, that they've begun to believe it. And I think that that's why the coaching part of this is so very important. Quickly, I just want to sort of go through some signs of self-gaslighting, and then let's really get into the nitty-gritty of how this applies to coaching. One of them is you make excuses for others' bad behavior. So what does that look like to you guys? I like how it's
so when Anthony yells at me about not doing my job well, I say, that's just how he is. It's not a big deal, Jen. Let it go.
Is it the yelling that you're taking issue with, or is it the criticism you're taking issue with?
Both.
Well, and it's also it can be somebody who unloads on you, and we go, oh well, they're having a really rough time right now. That doesn't make it right for them to dump all of their stuff on you, right? That is a form of you don't deserve that, and you don't have to put up with that. If somebody is having a rough time but they come and are a total ass to you, that's not fair to you. You didn't cause whatever's going on in their life, and they have control over their emotions, but we often allow people to kick us around for reasons that have nothing to do with us. And that's a form of self-gaslighting for sure. Absolutely. So Anthony, stop yelling at Jen, please. Get control of your emotions.
I've never raised my voice ever in any situation. Now I do yell and scream when I'm by myself and not on camera, not on mic with people. I do that.
But nobody can see it.
What about your little angry emoji? Does that count as yelling?
I love his angry.
Yeah, that is.
He's like one of my.
We can't show it here. I don't think we can. It's like a GIF of a red shaking thing.
It makes me crazy when I see that.
So funny.
Yeah, that's how I feel internally whenever I use that emoji. I won't be able to, in my new place, I won't be able to yell and
What are
scream
you
anymore.
You're gonna have to
I'll
find
have
a new way
neighbors.
to get those feelings out, unfortunately. Let's go for the next one. You invalidate your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. That one's a tricky one to me
Tell me
because
more about that.
it's saying when people typically say like your feelings are valid or you're invalidating your feelings, it's like it's okay to feel the way you do. That's what it's saying. Sometimes though, I don't think that's the case. I think there are times where people feel things and it is an unjustified feeling and they shouldn't feel that way. They should feel a different way.
Okay, so I think that what you're confusing, I think, is people are allowed to feel anything they feel because it's gonna come up, right?
Well, yeah.
But it's how they filter, respond, and react with those feelings, right?
Mhm.
That is important. Like you're allowed to feel upset for any reason, right? It's like telling a kid that's 2 if he stubs his toe, suck it up, it's not that bad. There's kids who've had their foot chopped off. That's
Mhm.
not that kid. That means not very well. All you've done is invalidate what that kid is feeling. That kid is still in pain. He's still feeling that pain, right? And it wouldn't be right for you to tell that kid you're not allowed to feel that right now. Like, you know what I mean? Emotions happen. It's what we do with them and how we process them that I think is important. And what
Then let's take the next step towards gaslighting and the invalidation of feelings.
So if I feel something, let's say I feel sad about maybe something that I have nothing to do with, right? Take a sympathy, just the act of sympathizing, and I'm not talking empathizing. Like when we see somebody else's pain, and then
when you cry at movies,
and then we relate it to a pain that we have felt, and make it a selfish emotion, right? So I see somebody upset because Anthony can't find his cat, right? And now I go run it through my selfish filter and I go, man, I remember when I couldn't find my cat. That sucked. And now I feel physically sad and I make it about me. The bad part of that is making it about me, but it's okay to have felt sad about it. Somebody who was gaslighting themselves would say, man, I'm a bad I should not have felt sad.
Mm-hmm. Or I'm too sensitive. Something's wrong with me.
Too sensitive. I'm not allowed to feel, but you're allowed to feel that. You're allowed to relate it to your own personal experience. What matters is what you do with that, right? And then I can take that sympathy and I can turn it into empathy, and I can go, God, that really sucks for you, Anthony. What can I do to help? And that's a whole different experience than. I remember when that happened to me, I miss my cat so much, and like making it all about me. I think that that's sort of where you get your hackles raised up, is that the people who take an emotion and they run wild with it, become very small, point perspective with it, and don't think about larger picture, if that makes sense. But we're allowed to I think a lot of these people, if they're upset about something, here's what I think of a big part. People pleasers come to mind a lot with this subject, because people pleasers are what are they doing? They're people who have been told that they aren't allowed to feel. It's not appropriate to feel something. It's not appropriate to be upset. It's not appropriate to share that emotion, and they stuff it down. And it comes out in these passive aggressive ways. And they're mad, and they are telling themselves, I'm not allowed. I can't share how I'm angry right now. I'm not allowed to share being angry. I'm not. So they're invalidating they're saying they know they're angry, but they aren't allowed to share it, aren't allowed to express it. And so they express it in unhealthy ways. And I think that it sort of really falls into this you invalidate your own feelings. And it's that, the next step is you're not allowed to share those feelings, right? You're not, and I just really think passive aggressive folks, or people who are being passive aggressive, are very gaslighty, self-gaslighty kind of human beings. And again, all of this though is, we all do it. And it's something that can be identified and coaches can help with. Let's move to the next one, which is you are stuck in the past. What do you think that means?
I think it means everything that is measured against something that happened in the history. So I call those filters. It's a filter of how you see something going on now.
I'm thinking of an example. I think I watched this like a while ago on like when I was a kid, like on Maury or Dr. Phil or something. It was talking about kids in the 90s or 80s who were convinced wrongly that, and this will get into how the past was. They were convinced wrongly that they were like maybe sexually abused as a kid. And they were convinced this by psychologists to say that they were repressing their memories.
Oh yeah.
And they were induced to like have these fake memories about incidents that didn't happen, and it got people thrown in jail. It only turned out years later that it was all made up and wasn't the case. But literally, being stuck in the past, your memories are not as solid as they are, and they're subject to change based on information that is currently available. So if you have self-esteem issues or you're unsure about your own self-perception of reality, living in the past, you can actually alter the way you interpret past events that may be self-destructive or may be beneficial to you.
Yes, and that you can absolutely, which is kind of funny because the next one sort of is in contradiction with what you just said, or what it will be a little different. But no, it is. You're right. What you're saying is not incorrect at all. But I think a big part of this for that you are stuck in the past is also that people who are gaslighting are running through past events and thinking about their experience in them and if it was true and how they felt, and rewriting sort of things like, oh well, she did that, oh she did, and they're really over analyzing experiences that they have and maybe traumas that they have, or even experiences that are small, but they're going through it so much that it feels traumatic, or they're just going, maybe it's an experience and they've been taught that they're not allowed to feel the way they feel about it, so they keep thinking about it, but they're repressing that emotion and they're pushing it down. I think one of the greatest things as somebody who's had post-traumatic stress disorder is you experience this fear that will come up, and anxiety, and it gets bubbles, and it feels overwhelming and scary, and you try to push it down and you can't, and then you start to beat yourself up over not being able to control your emotion and not being able to stuff it down and just get control of yourself, and then you feel bad about yourself, and it becomes this very destructive cycle where you're reliving that trauma, you're living that fear, and then you're beating yourself up over it and beating yourself up over the emotions. It becomes this really self-destructive cycle. And I think, but all of it's about this past and not feeling in control in the present, but we're really stuck in this sort of past cycle and reliving these past moments and reanalyzing. And I think that somebody who's self-gaslighting is doing that, is they're really rethinking things a lot instead of just being in the moment. They're running through a dialogue in their head. Jen?
Yeah, I would say too, they're defining their identity from a past version of themselves.
Oh yeah.
Which is very limiting.
Totally. Absolutely.
Limiting and faulty. I mean, clearly.
Well, and the memory, we don't have full memory. We all think, oh, I remember every detail. And there's lots of fill in the blank with those details because we can't remember everything. And frankly, we didn't see everything because we only saw it from our perspective. And then what we didn't see, we have a tendency to fill in that blank, and that becomes our story.
And we can't know what other people are thinking and feeling, and we make a lot of assumptions too. And then that becomes our truth. Not always the case. Let's move to the next one. We're almost through. There's only one more after this one. You doubt yourself and your memory.
Okay. I mean, it ties into living in the past. I mean, your memory is essentially your past, and
yeah. But if you're somebody who's telling yourself, I can't do that, I'm not good enough, I couldn't possibly, I can't, that's you doubting yourself. And then also, well, the second step is maybe you had an experience of, and you're like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why. And that's sort of not assigning yourself power when we do that. I think that's if you don't know why you acted the way you acted, I think you're doubting your memory because a bit when you do that, and you're definitely doubting yourself. And so there's a big awareness piece that has to come into this. Last one is you are critical and blame yourself, highly critical of and blame yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Negative self-talkers, I think.
Why'd you do that? You're so stupid. You always do this. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, that negative inner dialogue really comes up. Yeah, in this. I thought Lisa was going to say something, but I think she was about to sneeze. So.
Yeah, I was like in that in between sneeze. I was like, you're going to come or you're not. Right now, no.
So let's talk about how coaches can help. How can coaches help clients who self-gaslight?
Observation, pointing out inconsistencies. One of the big things I used to do, and I feel like I'm going to freeze in this, but one of the big things I used to do, I notice inconsistencies, and I used to tell myself, oh, stop being so judgy, Jen. I think I may have told you guys this is one of my inner like voices that was like, you're being judgy. And it's like, no, I'm just noticing that who you're presenting yourself as, and then some of your behaviors or some of the things you're saying or doing or the energy coming off you is not aligned. And I see that as an inconsistency. And that's kind of like my radar of something's going on. That's very useful in the coaching space because it's simply just bringing an inconsistency to the surface for the client to figure out if they want to look at that, yes or no, if there's something there. And I realized, no, I'm not judgy. I'm discerning. I'm good at observing, and it doesn't even mean anything. Sometimes the observations I make, they just are what they are. It's my perspective, and it's not a judgment at all. And very thankful that I was able to move past that. I didn't know that I was self-gaslighting.
Just now. It was a good point, though. She got out the really important stuff.
Jen's going to come full circle, though, once again, and she's going to be like, you know what? I am judgy, and that's okay. I'm making a judgment call. I'm using my best judgment as a coach.
I wonder what got her to that, too. I do wonder, like, okay, at what point...
Am I back?
Yeah, you are back. I wonder, we were just talking about you.
What got me through it was coaching. I was working with a coach. And
I wonder how it started. Like, I wonder at what point somebody went, you're judgy or something, or like you decided, like, stop.
Yeah.
Were you a mean girl in like high school?
You felt judged or something.
No, it depends who you ask, Anthony. Depends who you ask. Some girls would say yes.
I'm asking you.
Oh, me? I don't know. I don't think I was, but I may have had moments. Not proud of it. But again, I don't think I was. I was struggling in high school. So if I ever was a mean girl, it was because I was in pain the whole time, honestly. So, yeah, but you know.
So I think you touched on this. How can coaches help clients who self-gaslight? Recognize what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Challenge them.
Recognize what is going on with our client and go, oh, wait, that's inconsistent. I just noticed an inconsistency. Yeah. I just noticed an always statement. I just noticed, and being able to recognize those moments and tuning your discerning fork to being able to identify that ear, tuning your ear, I guess, to be able to identify those moments when our clients are self-gaslighting. And then you also mentioned this too, is then start to question, to bring awareness to the what is happening. So we notice always an always statement. You mentioned that an always statement coming out, Jen. So what would you say? What tool would you use as a coach with a client who was saying always?
I would just say always. Like basically, just to confirm, I'm hearing you say always. Like just giving them that second opportunity. Well, not always. That sometimes that's all they need is just someone else to echo what they're saying with a little bit of a question mark.
I mean, you could even throw a question like this: how does always show up? What does always look like?
What does always mean? Yeah.
Is that always true? Can you think of a time when maybe always it wasn't always that way? I think we always I think when we're younger in relationships, and even still when you get in those moments in relationships, and it's any kind of relationships, we have those stomp our feet moments when we're like, you always do this. And it's not always a fair statement to the person that we're talking to, because I sincerely doubt that always is the case in those situations. And I know, Lisa, it's one of the things we've talked about as a couples coach is bringing awareness to when always is true and when always is not true, right? And always is such a big word. It's so final. It's so this end of the spectrum. What maybe we could find some vocabulary that's somewhere in the middle. And it's one of the things we go into in our 102 class, how the English language doesn't allow for a lot of more neutral middle ground words. A lot of our vocabulary falls on one end of the spectrum or the other. Always, never. There's lots of examples we go into where we're sort of programmed, even with our vocabulary, to think black and white, and those gray area words are hard to come by in the English language. And we do exercises in class where we ask our students to do it, and you see their brains working, just struggling to find the middle ground words, which is something that's very fascinating.
There's still, from that exercise in 102, I can't find neutral words for the black and white words to this day. And I'm like, I got to find these words. This is important.
But that's why it's such a powerful exercise, because it brings such an awareness to how we're programmed to think in these finite terms.
Right.
And the truth is, there's a lot of middle ground that is much more true than the black and white. And that brings us really to the next dovetails: question language. Ask about evidence. What we've really been talking about here, right? Lisa, this is a point you really drove home when we talked about the prior to.
Right, I'm trying to get some fan movement in here. It's like an oven at the moment. I'm trying to figure out how to breathe.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Little distracted because I want to be present, but at the same time, I need to cool down. That's kind of like what we've been saying. When you do that always, what's the evidence that supports always?
Can you ever think of a time when that wasn't true? That's a very powerful question. Is there ever a time when that wasn't true? Because a lot of times we have clients that say, this is how it is. And then we ask, is there ever a time when it wasn't like that?
So we're going to have students that say, we're not supposed to dig in the history. We're not supposed to dig in the past. We're not digging. We're tapping for information and pulling it forward to today, so that that client can reflect today where they want to take this and how they want to use it and what is important about.
I had a client that she was convinced that she was a doomed procrastinator, but she wanted to work on her procrastination. And she was like, I always procrastinate. Always. Every time. It's always last minute. And I asked, was there ever a time when you didn't? And then she thought about it and said, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, what was different about that time? And by asking that question, she was able to identify the factors that came into her not procrastinating in that situation. And then we took those factors and were able to apply them to the situations where she would procrastinate. And so it was not only did it validate and affirm that she was capable of not procrastinating because she had told herself that she was a doomed procrastinator, that I just do it and I'm scared that if I don't do it, I won't be successful. I mean, that's how far this, but she's all, it causes me so much. She had all these problems. It caused her stress, all these things because she was so last minute, but she also felt like she could only be successful if she did do that. So we explored, okay, let's explore the times you didn't, and let's also explore if you were successful when you didn't, and then now let's take those tools and apply them to what we're working on. And so it was a tap into the past, but it was a tap into the past to help our client remove blocks, to help that client take those blocks that were very firmly in place and those fears and figure out, oh no, I can move forward without bringing these preconceptions, this gaslighting that I'm doing to myself with me. It was very powerful. So yes, it is kind of a weird thing where we're working to the future, but we are allowed to ask in those moments because we're not delving into, that's not where we're living. We're not, asking the why too much. It might come up a little bit, but we're doing it moving forward and still looking to how can we apply this to today? Not how can we fix the past? Because we can. Let's talk about the next one is allow the client to feel safe and validate. Let's fix the writing here. Their emotions.
I didn't hear it. Allow the client to feel safe and validate their emotions. Yeah. Yeah. No emotion is wrong.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's that thing where we bring it up. What do you do if a client cries in your session?
Let them cry.
Right.
It's not a problem. It's only a problem if you make it a problem.
Sit there, be present, and allow them that space.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of things that we even say probably don't do. Don't offer them a tissue. You can have tissues there, but by offering them a tissue, you're could be invalidating their ability. You could be saying, you look messy, you cause all the things that might go on in that client's head. Oh God. And instead of just letting them have that moment and just being silent and just holding that space for that emotion.
It could be something that you talked about in your setting up your sessions. If you tend to be someone who allows for your emotion, have a box of tissue, so you can set that up before so that during that session, they don't feel they have the capability of reaching for the Kleenex or not.
And I circle back to our, we talked about this a little bit last month, I think, to our passive aggressive folk who feel like they can't express anger and frustration, right? And creating a space where they can share that anger and frustration and then start to work on tools to healthfully process that anger and frustration and in their day-to-day life. If that's something we're working on, I want to be less passive aggressive. That's so going to be so critical, is creating that space where they're finally allowed to express the frustration. Because the passive aggressive person feels like they cannot and they're not allowed to. And that's why they act out in passive aggressive ways. So it's so important. And this is such a powerful tool for coaches, is to be able to hold that space for emotion and let a client feel safe expressing. And it's not something that happens always in the first session. Something that can take a long time to happen, sometimes very quickly. And sometimes it can be two ends of the spectrum there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes there might be emotions that your client is still hiding. They might be very able to cry. And it might be, that might be a quick go-to emotion, but where they're not comfortable is expressing frustration. Where they're not comfortable is expressing anger. So they're more naturally inclined to go to an emotion they're comfortable expressing, but sometimes you give it a little time and they start to realize, wait, I'm also this. I'm not just sad. I'm also angry. I'm not just sad, I'm also, and sometimes those deeper lying emotions can be harder for them to share. So giving them a safe place to explore those is pretty awesome. Facilitate a more complete perspective. What does that mean to you guys?
Just offer them another lens. You know, you can use what if. I like what if because it's just opening a door to a new possibility. They have to walk through it or close it back up. So
Give
they're
me
in
an
complete
example. Can you think of an example? Like
yeah, what if that's not true? Just something really simple. What if that's not the way it is for that person? Or what if it's
Yeah.
different from how you're thinking about it? What would that be like?
I
What
know
else is possible?
So you could do opposites there. Consider the opposite of what you just said. What is the opposite of that? And how does that relate to you? And how do you want it to relate to you? I mean, depends on what that is, but yeah.
I think a really powerful one in this space is how is that serving you?
Mm-hmm.
Gotta use that all the time. I just used it the other day, doing new things, and where I'm at, learning and growing in new things. I was being helped, and I was not on purpose, just arbitrarily coaching someone, and that's what we talked about. How is that serving you?
Yeah.
And everybody always answers, well, it's not. But that's the critical piece, because there is some way it is serving you. And it's important to recognize when those times are appropriate and when they're not, because that's where the learning and growth can occur.
Like we can go back to our, we have these default things we do. Like Anthony defaults. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He's moving. He won't be able to scream and curse in the silence or in the safe space of his home. And so we might have to ask him, well, how is screaming and cursing serving you? What is that doing for you?
Or not doing
It is an outlet for a lot of pent up rage.
Okay, so
like an off gassing of pressure.
Gonna have to explore more creative ways for
holding it inside longer.
How is that
taking it out of my children?
But
that's a good thing.
Taking it
don't
out
have
of
any children, so
Drinking heavily.
just sometimes like
drinking heavily.
I think one of the things, and it's one of the things we'll be talking about in our self-sabotage 101, is that there's a fear of success and a fear of failure. Like we have both a fear of success and a fear of failure. And that fear of success serves our clients in some way, where they're putting up their own blocks, where they're sabotaging their own success. And one of the quite powerful questions would be in that is, how is that serving you? And they coming to the realization that they are afraid of their own success. That's very powerful. We'll talk about that'll be next week's subject. So, but facilitating this more complete perspective and understanding, I think a big part of this too is bringing our clients to understanding that, and this sort of dovetails into our final point here, into moving into a perspective where they are more knowledgeable, more in control, more empowered, more capable of doing things on their own. That's that big self-esteem piece coming in.
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece in this facilitating a more complete perspective. Honestly, I think could be substituted for assisting in them building a self-esteem, self-worth, that they can get out and do these things and accomplish things. And yeah.
Consider self-care. With
And that's
self-care,
yeah. The do, I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but this is where the do piece comes in for me after this. It's like I guess this leads into the next one, ask around a plan moving forward. And that's that do piece. Like, okay, well, we know you do this. We know we've figured out when we ask that, always we ask that, and then we can say, okay, so when you feel this way moving forward, or how are you gonna, what are the steps? How are you gonna handle it? I mean, that's that. Let's move this to the future and what the next pieces are for that. I know there's things that I didn't think of inside this. How can coaches help with self-gaslighting?
just simply being present, being honorable to the coaching model that we teach, And what's going to provide importance to that is being silent when it's necessary, asking questions instinctually based on who that client is. I think you can't ask all those questions. I think what you presented for us to share is perfect. It's the start of really recognizing you don't own where the client's coming from. They own where it is. And you can't really possibly know the question you're going to ask them before you see them.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to plan it all out here. I'm out of focus too. I don't know why. I do know why, actually. I'm fixing it right now. So that was a lie.
Self-gaslighting.
Yeah, I'm self-gaslighting right there. Final thoughts, ladies. Final thoughts on ladies and gentlemen, on this subject, sleeping kitty.
For me personally, I have moments where I do this self-sabotage, and I have to take moments where I do writing or I talk to my best buddies, something that allows me to release it and find out what that next logical phase is in that moment. And I think that's what we're doing with clients as well, helping them find out, really what their intention is and what do they want to do with it, where do they want to go with it.
I think you just brought something to mind. I think a big part, and Jen, you're back and you look like you're moving, so I'm going to speak very quickly. A big part of this self-sabotaging, even the self-gaslighting. So what's really cool and crazy about gaslighting is when we're doing it to ourselves, you're not talking to anybody else. It's an internal dialogue, right? When you've got somebody gaslighting you, it's typically just you and them, right? Because if you talk to a third person, if there was a third party there that had that experience, suddenly this one human being would not be able to invalidate and be able to question. And so speak out loud what's going on in here. And I think that we become so afraid to share what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what's going on inside. And that's where this coaching perspective comes in, because if we hold it all in, we're only getting our own feedback, our own perspective. We're only getting one human being's picture of the world. And the moment you start to speak it out loud, I think already you start to realize how silly sometimes it is, how hard we are on ourselves, how untrue and unrealistic the things that we tell ourselves are. So whether it be a coach, whether it be a friend, whether it be somebody, have the courage to sit down and share what this is doing. And I think just from that, so much clarity comes from that, speaking it out loud. And I think that's writing it down, like with Lisa said, she writes it down. It's a similar sort of process where you're getting it out of here and putting it into the world, and then realizing, oh my goodness, okay, maybe this is not right. Maybe I'm completely wrong here. And so if you don't have that human being, another human being, a coach is a fantastic solution to finding that person that you can speak these things out loud to. I think that's so powerful. I know I've done it with every human being on this live right now, where I have gone, am I crazy? Or can I just run this by you? I need to vent right now and just get it out. And when I vent, I know how ridiculous I sound, but I just gotta because otherwise it's just gonna drive me crazy and it's gonna eat me alive. And having that space where I can get these internal things out, I think is such a powerful tool. Because when we keep it all inside, we are able to convince ourselves of the craziest and wildest things. And sometimes just telling somebody else and they go, hey, maybe it's not that way. And that can be such a powerful. I know there are times I've been really hard on myself, and I've had Lisa, Anthony, and Jen all at some point or another say, no, Brooke, cut it out. You don't need to be that hard on yourself. Or maybe this is, look at it this way. And, did you ever think of it this way? And when that's so powerful, but it takes the courage to put it out there. So have the courage. that was a long last thought. Jen's moving.
She's got to hurry up.
I'll try really quick. I think that for coaches, it's normal that your client self-gaslights. It's not a problem that needs to be fixed. It just needs to be brought to their awareness. And sometimes just moving it into their awareness can be powerful enough to start moving it through their life differently. And just being with them when they have that awareness without shame or judgment can be powerful as well, because they might start to have shame or judgment of themselves once they have that awareness. And so just holding that space for them to be seen in that moment without judgment is important. So nothing to be fixed, just to be noticed.
And you're amazing, Jen, because in this short, brief amount of that you brought up, at least 2 topics we'll be talking about in our Self-Sabotage 101, which is shame, and which is also what we mentioned, like the fear of success and the fear of failure, which we talked about earlier. So stay tuned. Anthony.
All right, it's 5 o'clock, so we will sign off. We will see you guys
You don't have any
next.
final thoughts on self-sabotage?
Well, you guys took up all the time.
Here he goes. He's yelling.
So my final thoughts, if it is a problem and a goal that your client wants to work on, then the best thing to do, which we've talked about, was probably figuring out how it benefits the client. Because in all the articles that we read, it seems like we're focusing like the person's still the victim. I'm the victim of gaslighting, even though I'm self-gaslighting. Not one of them has ever framed it in the way that they're also the perpetrator and they're also the abuser. And so figuring that relationship out and then figuring out how it benefits that person and having that conversation of how does this behavior benefit me is a great way to get around to solving the issue. Because then you identify, am I avoiding something? Am I self-coping? Am I trying to do self-preservation through this way? Gaslighting serves a purpose when you're doing it to yourself. The key is figuring out why.
Yeah.
So that's the best way a coach can approach that sort of situation when the topic comes up and the client wants to address it. With that being said, we will sign off and see you guys next week. Thank you all for joining us for this week's CLCI Live. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, and take our classes, Coaching 101, Coaching 102. We will not gaslight you in these classes. Not once. If that's our only selling point, is that we will not gaslight you.
Oh my goodness.
It's a good one.
All right.
Good selling point.
See you guys next week.
Go out there and be kind to yourselves. Bye.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4:00 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at certifiedlifecoachinstitute.com. Until next time, be well.